All right, today is a Target Muscles Day. And today, before the gym, I want to talk about something that is seriously important. I want to talk about something that has created so much self-doubt in millions of homies, in millions of subscribers, in millions of viewers, in millions of avid weightlifters worldwide. Men, woman, child. You know what? Let's stop with all the introductions. Let's get to the point. Other people's expectations and other people's preconceived notions are one of the most debilitating things in order to enjoying life. Like, it's not even just in a lifting context. Obviously, I'm going to talk about it within a weightlifting, prism point of view, but other people's expectations are one of the most weighty, heavy things that'll just knock the wind out of you no matter what. And it doesn't even have to be, what you're thinking. It doesn't have to be society. It doesn't have to be a stranger. It can be a parent. It can be a brother. It can be a significant other. Bars. You know what I'm talking about here. You know what I'm talking about. Anybody that is not you presenting a side of understanding. That is what it means by preconceived notions. That was what it means by other people's ideals. It doesn't just have to be, sorry, that siren's pretty loud. It doesn't just have to be like someone who you don't identify with. It can be someone that is very, very close to you that ruins a perspective of something. I'm thinking more along the lines of what I've experienced. And what I've experienced is, I'm thinking of it from reviews, what people think of something. Before you go to the movie, what is one of those things that you do? Well, you see if it's good or not. You go to a site and you read someone explaining, is this worth your time? You ask a buddy who's already seen it. You ask your brother who just went to the movies the other day, hey, what was playing? What was good on? Was that worth your time? What would you rate it? What would you review it? And you build an idea before you've ever even consumed something. I'm thinking of in the gym, asking and looking at other people's perspective. It helps you gain something for yourself, but it shouldn't be all you rely on. If I say Bulgarian split squats are not my favorite, does that mean that you are going to hate Bulgarian split squats? Well, I don't think so. It's going to have to be something that you define for yourself. You can't build your life based on stereotype, or else you just become an amalgamation of everyone before you. You just become something that is not truly yourself. If you don't go and get yourself in the mud, how are you going to realize your potential? Or how are you going to realize if you like or dislike something? You have to try out things, and you can't be built on other people's expectations. And you can't be built on other people's preconceived notions or ideas. I just beat, this morning, Ghost of Tsushima. PlayStation game, big name title, about a samurai, kind of vagabond type of dude from Japan. Very, very fun. I thoroughly enjoyed the game. I had a few bugs, but the bugs honestly made things funny when I would get stuck on stuff, and all I had to do was just reset, and then I'd be fine. That was my only complaint with the game. It had a few draggy moments. It had some moments where, characters weren't fully realized, or there was some dumb NPC stuff. But overall, I enjoyed the game immensely. But when the game first came out, I read all these reviews that were 7 out of 10. Or 8 out of 10, or something where it was it was good, it's worth your time, but it's not going to be this masterpiece, and it's not really going to be anything that you're going to, go forward and really take away, it's not going to be in your top 10, is what the basic consensus was. And I feel like I went into the game already having this idea of what it would be. Already having this idea of, it's going to suck here, it's going to be glitchy here, it's going to I'm not going to be moved by the story because it's just a basic game that's fun for the gameplay. And as I was playing it, I realized that was not the case at all. I got enthralled in it. Ever since I was younger, I've always loved Japanese culture, language, like music and stuff. I've always been enthralled in that sense of stuff. I don't know what's drawn me to it specifically, but I always enjoyed learning about that type of culture. And so I was really invested in how built up this world was and how much it was based on this older version of Japan. And I loved the gameplay. And at the end, when I just beat it this morning, the story was so engaging. It was so, like, it pulled at my heartstrings so much. But I felt like at the end of it, after I was done, I was like, this was so much better than I expected. But why? Why was it so much better than I expected? Well, I realized it's because I went in with a preconceived idea. And I had that expectation broken when I defined something for myself. And there was like a moment where I had to realize, like, whoa, this means something. This isn't just like a vacant emotion. This is something that is powerful. I looked at someone else's expectation, a wider consensus of expectation, to try and get my thing, to try and get my opinion, to try and get what I identified with from other people. And I realized I was pleasantly surprised when I stopped looking at everything else, when I cut out the noise, when I stopped thinking of other people's expectations. And I've done that with the gym before too. I'm going to go in and get a lift, and then I'm going to continue the story once I'm done. Okay, so back to the gym story. So I've done that with the gym before too. I've had times, I'm coming up on 5 years of lifting, 5 whole entire years of being in the gym. So at this point, there is, a part of me that can say, I've seen it. I've done it. I've seen it. I've been told, even before I got really into weightlifting in 2020, I was doing other things. I was doing other forms of keeping my body active. I've heard people tell me, you don't even need to do cardio if you weightlift. I've heard people told me cardio is the only way to go. I've heard people say this exercise doesn't do anything. I've heard people say, lower chest doesn't exist. I've heard people say you have to do an ab workout every day or you're never going to see your abs. I've heard the craziest takes. I've heard all the different things. I've heard people say, hammer curls don't do anything. I've heard people say hammer curls are essential for seeing your biceps. And you go through every twist and turn, but as you meet these things, you have to define yourself. You have to create something for yourself. Otherwise, you will never be able to claim a personality. You will never be able to claim a sense of self if you just always follow the noise. Obviously, I'm not saying be a contrarian. Obviously, I'm not saying ignore every piece of advice that anyone ever tells you. But I am saying there's a loud majority of people out there. There's a lot of people who just go with the flow more than letting themselves control their own life. Going with the flow is very important for being able to feel good and being able to, roll with the punches. You have to be able to flow like water with whatever life gives you. You have to, take into account the best of what you can do in a moment. And you can't, set an unrealistic expectation and crumble when you don't meet that expectation. That's why you have to go with the flow. But you can't let your life be defined by a flow. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you see that point that I'm trying to make? Where if you have no control, if you have no say, if you have no understanding, what happens? You lose. You lose everything. You lose understanding, you lose control, you lose direction, you lose purpose. You lose your life if you let the flow overtake you. You drown. You straight up drown. And you can't drown in your existence. That's horrible. That's the worst outcome, at least in my opinion. And it all comes back to this thing that, my grandpa says all the time. This is getting a little personal now, but I'm not afraid to do that. He always told my mom growing up, when my mom had to face all these hard things. She was an oldest child as well, and she had to be put through the ringer on all kinds of things. And she would hate it. And she would complain, and she would moan, and she would be like, this is not fair. This is not just. Why am I going through these things? And he would look at her, and he would tell her, it builds character. And in the moment, My mom was like, that's such a weak excuse. That never makes anything, that doesn't make me feel better, that doesn't explain anything. And she didn't understand what he was saying until she was older. And she was like, oh, I get this. I get this character thing. And when it came time for my generation, for me to grow up and for me to face these hard things, my mom would look at me and tell me the very same thing that she hated so much growing up. And she would look at me and she would say, it builds character. And I didn't really understand it either. I don't think it made me mad as much as it did to her. I don't think it really made me frustrated. I think it just really confused me, because I was like, what is character? I was like, what does this mean? What does this like do? I couldn't wrap my head around it. And now that I have become an adult, I hate saying that, because it feels so like cheesy to say I'm an adult, even though like, you know, I'm just crossing that threshold into adulthood. But now that I'm older, I see what that character is. I see character isn't just a lame excuse. I see character, it's not just this saying. It's not just, you know, this concept. Character is who you are. And what I'm getting at through all of this is that if you let other people define you, if you let other people call you weird, if you let society call these shots for you and don't take ownership of who you are and what you stand for and what your purpose is, and you just drift along the current, you don't build a character. You don't build a personality. You can't say, oh, I'm Tom, I do this. You can't say, oh, I'm, you know, Rebecca, this is my thing. You can't say, you know, I'm Steven, this is, you know, what I like to do, and this is, you know, who I am. You don't get the chance to say that. You don't get the chance to like define yourself. You don't get the chance to create your own life. And I feel like that is a crime. And I feel like I need to like build that message and say, build your character. Don't be afraid of what other people are saying. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.